I have traveled the world to the 7 seas, and I've been up at the top and down on my knees. When I think where I've been, what I'm going to do, I'd rather be here for Jim Rohn with you, especially the family. But I'd like to talk about the man, not the speaker, not the philosopher. I was introduced to Jim 40 years ago. And who introduced me to E. James Rohn? Earl Nightingale. And Earl discovered me because an old tape was sent to his, and make sure that you record everything you do. Because Earl heard a tape of mine, and then the next thing I knew, I met Lloyd Conant, and the next thing I knew, Earl and Lloyd took me to see E. James Rohn. I said, he doesn't leap around the stage and pluck the hair out of his chest. He doesn't try to be impressive, because he knew that the people who try to impress are less impressive. Authenticity. I'd like to talk about him. It's not about me. I'm not even a household word. You know what happened when I spoke to Congress? Ted Kennedy asked me for more rolls and butter. No, he thought I was the maitre d'. I look like the maitre d'. I'll go ahead and stamp your parking ticket for you. 2 months ago in Vaughn's Market. Oh, yes, it happened. You don't think it really did. You think speakers make things up. No, they don't. No, I'm at the checkout stand. The guy at the checker said, "Oh my gosh, it's you. Do you know who you are?" I said, "Well, it's not that big a deal. You know, I'm not that big a deal." And he said, oh yes, you're Spider-Man's uncle." I said, "What?" I said, "No, actually, that is Cliff Robertson, and he's 82. And so Jim and I, we're the same vintage. And he and I had vintage wine and vintage oatmeal cookies with raisins, the big ones. And in the 70s, throughout Australia, late 70s, early 80s, 90s, 20th century, Earl Nightingale, sitting beside me, he said, "Watch him." I said, "Wow, he's sitting on a stool." He said, "He doesn't need to leap around. Watch." Reading glasses at half-mast later on. You're going to want to write this down. Time is more important than money, because you can get more money, but you can't get more time. It spends itself in its present moment. You can't save time. Scientists can't invent more minutes. 168 hours a week on a chessboard. You move priorities, but not time. Time is the only equal opportunity employer. Wow. I said, that's big stuff. I said, you notice that he never had to hold up a bag of books, tapes, and CDs. Because if you got the real thing, you don't have to tout it or shout it. People buy. If you're teaching, you don't need to sell. So he wasn't a salesman. He didn't need to be. People bought without being told. And they bought because of authenticity, total transparency, and of all things, complete humility. Never talked about him. That's why I like to be around him. He always asks me questions. How you doing? Oh, terrific. Australia, big hit in Australia he was. See, he didn't need to be on Oprah. He didn't need to send out all the stuff. Word of mouth, one-on-one, telling, planting shade trees under which he knew he'd never sit. Johnny Appleseed. Throw them here, some of them take, some of them don't, doesn't matter. Not for the fame, not for the name, not for the money. And I know for a fact that the man really cared for his family and his children and his grandchildren, and was interested in their education and what they were doing, not what he was doing. So it was never about him. And Earl Nightingale leaned over and said, you know, he's possibly the greatest business philosopher of our time. I said, wow, maybe I better get to know him. Maybe he'll rub off on me. Maybe I won't need to be a shouter. Maybe I can learn from him. And sure, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. And I'm sure I've imitated and given some of his euphemisms and some of his great wisdom, but he's without peer. We're the peers that are here who love him and have learned from him. And he's not leaving a legacy, he's living the legacy. Because the immortality in a human being is what they've left in other people to carry on that legacy. So you live it, not leave it. And he said that knowledge and money were just the same. You can make a lot of money, but what good does it do you to have it? You can learn a lot, but what good does it do to learn it? It's only when you share the knowledge and re-employ the money that either of them mean anything. And he and I talked about the pharaohs of Egypt. He said, isn't it funny? They tried to take everything with them for the next life materially. And they didn't understand the difference between quality of life and standard of living. Standard of living is how much money you make, style over substance. And Jim said that quality of life was the way you spent your time, with whom, and in what environment. And I can only tell you from my experience that it has been my greatest honor and privilege to not only have learned from the mentor, but to be a friend of the man, somebody who truly walked his talk and was the real thing, not an expensive imitation.